In this video, a SHAD top mount and a BRP SHAD saddlebag rack will be installed on a base model Spyder F3. Before proceeding, take a moment to familiarize yourself with this diagram. Both kits will include its own mounting hardware, but we're going to use most of the hardware found in the SHAD top mount kit, with the one exception. We're going to use the 50mm screw that's found in the saddlebag kit. And it's very important that we're using the smaller spacer found in the SHAD kit. We're going to start things off by removing the rear screw from the handrail. We're going to take a 50mm screw and put a lock washer on, followed by a regular washer. And then we're going to take that screw and put it through the rear hole of the top mount rack. Now you're going to take that small spacer, put it inside the bushing, put them both on the back side of that bolt, and insert it into the rear handrail. I found this process easiest by starting with the rear screw because it allowed you to take the rack and just kind of balance it up against the handrail there. And now I'm removing the handrail's front screw. And again, I'm taking the 50mm bolt from the BRP kit, putting a lock washer on, followed by a regular washer. Going to put that into the front hole of the rack, through the spacer, into the bushing, and into the socket of the handrail. Though this is a small adjustment, I'm going to pull the rack back and I'm going to lift it up. My thinking is that by pulling the rack back, it's going to give my passenger the most space possible. And by lifting it up, it's going to create a better angle for trailing vehicles to see my taillights. And since I will be using SHAD's Terra top case, I chose this particular base plate. And with this, you will put the 4 specialty washers into these holes here. And those holes will line right up with the holes on the top mount, which we just installed. And here's our first look at the top mount, which we just installed. And we will be using the top holes here and the bottom holes here. Now the top holes are a little far apart, so we'll have to squeeze in a little bit here to get those screws to drop in. And here I'm putting the mounting plate onto the top mount, and I'm trying to line up those holes which I had just mentioned. The bottom 2 line up really quick, really easy, and those are the ones you want to put your screws in first. And once you do that, you can throw the top ones in, and they're going to be a little stubborn. They're not going to want to go in right away. And that one dropped in. Then you see those holes could be a little closer together. So you got to squeeze the corner here. And there you go. Dropped right in there. The top mount came with some washers which I felt were a little too small. I mean, they worked, but I opted for a larger diameter stainless steel washer. And here I am putting a nylon locking nut on the back of it. I put those locking nuts on all 4 corners, finger tight to start. And here I'm going to take a 10mm wrench. I'm going to put them onto these bolts and start tightening them up a little bit. And I'm going to do the traditional cross pattern here. And before you have this thing completely locked down, you might want to make some small adjustments just to make sure that that plate is straight and it's in alignment and that it looks good. And when you're finishing up tightening these 4 screws, you don't have to crush it. Just get them tight, get them snug. This is the cover to the top mount. It has these 4 little tabs up front. You need to sneak them underneath and give it a little bit of a push, and that thing will just drop right in. There you go. Now, we want to be careful and not cross-thread these plastic screw holes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this screw in, and I'm going to apply a little bit of downward force, and I'm going to turn the screwdriver counterclockwise, hoping to hear a little click or a little pop. And if I hear that, that means that that screw has found the thread, and you can screw forward. Unfortunately, I did not notice that with this first screw. And I didn't get it on the second one either. But on the third and fourth one, I did get it. And I got audio of that for you.
Oh, felt it that one. And it even made a noise. It tells me it's in the threads. And one more over here. Oh, heard it. There it goes. That means you're in the thread. You go forward.
On both sides of the Spyder, there's going to be a access panel, and they're held in position by a torx 30 screw. And once those plates are removed, you do not need them anymore, because in the SHAD Saddlebag rack kit, you're going to get 2 new ones. Just hang on to that screw, though. You will be using that. To remove this bottom plate, you're looking at 7 T30 screws, 5 on the bottom and 2 on top. And here, the rear tire was interfering with the driver I was using. The driver was just a little too long, and it kept bumping up against the tire. So I ended up switching to a smaller, stubbier tool, and with a little bit of effort, we got both of those front T30s out. And the T30 in the tail was also being partially obstructed by the tire. No big deal. It came out. And here are the final 2 screws holding the bottom plate to the Spyder. And like I mentioned earlier, those are also T30s. And with that, the bottom plate will fall right onto the rear wheel, and you can pull it out and take a look at it. All of that removing all 7 of those screws is so you can take those 2 little holes and make them bigger. And spoiler alert, anything smaller than 20 millimeters isn't going to work. Ask me how I know. Okay, now look. You're making a permanent change to your F3 right now. Take your time. And if you look closely, you'll see that I put a piece of blue tape on the step drill bit. And I did that so that I could control how deep I drilled my hole and subsequently how wide that hole became. This is a replacement plate that came with a BRP kit. And as you can see, it will not fit into those holes. Those holes are 18 millimeters. They need to be at least 20 millimeters. Here I flipped the bottom plate over and ran my step drill bit through the holes which I had widened. And by doing this, it cleaned up all the debris, the plastic strands which were hanging from the holes. And man, I'm telling you, it looked factory. It came out perfect. Now, there are actually 2 reasons to take the bottom plate off. The second reason is that you need to put these clips on. And to do so, you want to make sure that the button side is facing up and the flat side is facing down. Moving to the left side of the Spyder, the instructions call for the removal of this clip and the replacement of 2 new ones. Interestingly, this clip is identical to the replacement clips, so you're going to end up with an extra one. And just remember, like the other side, the button side goes up and the flat side goes down on these 2 clips. So I'm including this clip to show you the struggles I was having in this torrential downpour, these hurricane winds, just the overall dampness of the situation. I just could not get those 5 holes to line up. But when I did, I found that starting with the tail screw, everything went in nice and easy. Then I proceeded to screw in the top T30s. And of course, who could forget the 2 screws up front? Now, these 2 rear plates here, they are marked right and left in case you get it mixed up and you struggle to get them in. I'm just mentioning this for a friend. This is one of the replacement panels that came with the BRP kit. You will attach it with the T30 that you saved earlier. You don't need a washer for this, and you don't need to crank this down. You just want to put it in there and get it snug. And it's only the right side that will need a screw. And here I'm removing the front screw of the handrails because we're about ready to put that saddlebag rack on. And now we're going to take that screw with its washers and we're going to put it through the front hole of the BRP saddlebag rack. And we're going to put a rubber washer on the back side of that screw. We're going to line it up and we are going to finger screw it into the handrail. And now we're moving on to the rear screw to repeat the same process. And of course, let's not forget to place that rubber washer in between the two plates. Oh, and I forgot to mention, if you want to use Loctite, this is the time to start doing it. Now, the gap between the saddlebag rack and the frame might look excessive, but don't you worry. We got this all figured out. The saddlebag kit will include 2 sets of spacers, a smaller set and a larger set. We will be using the smaller set here on the right side. With these screws, you'll be using washers and a 4mm hex driver to screw them in. Moving on to the left side, we will take the replacement plate and it just snaps right in. No need for a screw here. And we're going to repeat the same process of removing the front screw first. Now, I know there are people out there who like to powder coat their things, and this mounting point unscrews and comes off easily. Okay, so back on track, we're going to take that screw, we're going to put it through the front hole of the saddlebag rack, throw a rubber washer on the back of it, and thread it through into the handrail. And finally, we're going to remove the rear handrail screw. And at this point, I think the class knows what we're doing. We're going to take that screw, Going to put it through the saddlebag rack, throw a rubber washer on the back side, and we're going to thread it into the handrail. And we're down to our last set of spacers. This is a longer set, which was included with the saddlebag kit. You'll take a screw with a washer and you will insert those. I had a little bit of difficulty getting those started by hand, so I had to use my 4mm hex driver. And at this point, we are in the home stretch, and I'm just tightening things down. Going to take that 4mm hex and give these screws a little bit more of a twist. And that's pretty much going to do it. And just like that, we are finished. These base model F3s are, without a doubt, the sportiest of the Spyder line. And this additional hardware that I put on it doesn't really seem to take that much away from its looks. And the nice thing, though, is that at any time, it can all be removed and it can go right back to its base look. All right, we're going to wrap things up here, but don't be alarmed. This is not over. I will be back in a follow-up video, and we're going to bag this Spyder F3.